Okay, hey everybody, this is Christopher, and just gonna talk a little bit about Shellshock on OS 10. And so, what is Shellshock? You've probably heard about it. Um, a lot of tech publications making a big deal about it. Shellshock is a vulnerability to GNU's Bash shell that gives attackers access to run remote commands on a vulnerable system. Okay, what does all of that mean? Um, First of all, a shell is a command line interface that allows you to um, send commands directly to the operating system. Okay, so if you want to see, this is my shell right here, and as you can see, my shell is Bash. So yeah, so Bash stands for Born Again Shell. So it's a type of shell that's the default on most Linux and OS 10 operating systems. So it's very prevalent. It's the most common shell, and there's a vulnerability in that, and then gives attackers access to run remote commands on a vulnerable system. Okay, vulnerable system is any computer that's running Bash that hasn't been patched as of Tuesday, September 30th, 2014. Okay, so um, most Macs out there are probably still vulnerable because people don't patch. And what do remote commands mean? Local command is if I go, I'm at my computer right now on my keyboard, and I type something in. Okay, so I just ran a command, the command cat, and right, which is concatenate. So I just ran a local command because I'm actually at my computer and I typed into the keyboard. A remote command is a command that's run from somewhere else. So usually over a network, over the internet. Um, so this is bad because you don't want strangers on the internet to run commands on your computer. So this is very, very serious. A shell shock. Um, this is kind of a pun on that it's a vulnerability in the shell. And yep, so it's very, very serious. And as it says here, if your system has not updated Bash since Tuesday, September 30th, 2014, you're definitely vulnerable to this. Okay. Um, and let's see what Apple said about Shellshock, however, because the tech publications were going crazy about this, saying that this could be uh, even worse than Heartbleed, which we had earlier this year. Apple's OS 10 operating system is derived from Unix. Soon after the flaw became public, Apple advised that only users who have configured advanced Unix services may be vulnerable to the Bash flaw. This is a lot of technobabble. I mean, yes, OS 10 is derived from Unix, but that doesn't really have a lot to do. I mean, the problem is that they're using the Bash shell. And really, this technobabble, it's just meant to say like, oh, I don't know what Unix is. I'm not an advanced Unix advanced user, so I don't have to worry about this. But in there's this this is a researcher found this on September 28th, 2014. So this is very, very recently after Shellshock was discovered, and even before a lot of people got patched. And it says here, the DHCP bash Shellshock proof of concept shows that it will be possible to execute command on remote hosts. Remember, execute command on remote hosts means strangers across the internet can run commands on your system. That's bad, regardless of the operating system client. That means whether you're on BSD, Linux, or OS 10, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're running a vulnerable version of Bash. And proof of concept, that means that they've proven that they can actually do this in real life. In the demo, Jeff used a DHCP server to change the configuration of the DHCP client, and he applied to the client DHCP parameter request list. Okay, so what a DHCP server is it assigns computers on a network IP addresses. Okay, So you might be thinking, what is that? Why do I need to worry about this? Okay. Basically, anytime you're on an untrusted network, or basically any network where there's someone malicious running the network, you would be vulnerable to this. Okay. A good example and a very practical real world example would be if you go to Starbucks and some sketchy guy there secretly sets up his own Wi-Fi router and sets up his own network, and you accidentally connect to that one rather than the legitimate Starbucks one, he could run this kind of attack. And as you can see, in this is not a hacker tool. This is just the actual settings for the DHCP client, and there's an option here, additional option. All right, number 114, and then he has this empty command, and then semicolon, which is kind of the key to Shellshock, and then echo foo. So this is not an actual malicious thing, but it's a proof of concept showing. And if you connected to this, I think that your shell would print out foo, which just shows that the guy running this server was able to execute a command on the vulnerable systems. So if and the scary thing is I could do this right now. So if I were to go, bring in my little Belkin router, to Starbucks and set up star BUX Starbucks Wi-Fi network, and probably some people are going to connect to it. And if I set this option, I could run commands on any vulnerable MacBook that's there. And I do go to Starbucks, and most of the systems are MacBooks. So this is very, very serious. Okay, so now I'm on this site, shellshocker.net. And they have this script that you can run or copy and paste this command into your system. And I did look through this. I did look through this script in case you're worried, like, oh, how can I trust this script? Okay, here we go. Here we have the script. And I've went through it, and it's not malicious. And what it's doing is, if you can see here, these are comments, but these are the different iterations of the vulnerability. So it's checking for each one, and it's not running. If you're vulnerable, it's not doing anything malicious. It's just printing out you're vulnerable. And then so they have this version of the script has 7 different checks that it checks for. I did this video earlier, and my system was actually vulnerable, but then I've already patched mine. But I originally here in OS 10, I went to software update, right? And if you can see here, on October 6, 2014, I had an OS 10 update, and it says it improves the stability, compatibility, and security of your Mac. And for detailed information about the security content of this update, please visit this link. Okay, so this came out October 6, 2014. And the Bash update from Apple came out September 29th, 2014. So that was almost a full week before I did my system update. So I just assumed, I didn't run this check. I just assumed that my version of Bash here was patched. I actually don't use OS 10 as my main operating system, so that's why I wasn't getting really into it. I usually use Linux. So on my Linux systems, I was very kind of rigorous in checking to make sure that I wasn't vulnerable. But I ran this script. I ran the script earlier today, and it showed that of the 7 vulnerabilities that I checked for, 4 I was vulnerable for. As you can see, I did run the patch, so now I am not vulnerable for all of them. But I had to go and manually find this link, and it wasn't easy to find too. I had to look around. I found this link and I manually downloaded this OS 10 Bash Update 1.0. I installed it, and then only then I ran the script again, and it showed that I was invulnerable for these 7 things that it checks for. So yeah, and if you want to find that, and again, this site is good, shellshocker.net. You know, you can run this command here, and it will do checks for all 7. And here you can run these individual commands to check each one. And then here, if you scroll down under how to fix Shellshock, scroll down to OS 10, and it has links. If you're running OS 10, Apple has released official patches for Mavericks, Mountain Lion, and Lion. Note also that if you are running a version of OS 10 that's older than Lion, you are not getting security updates from Apple, and there is no official news thing. They didn't announce this. They just stopped sending out updates for these. So yeah, so if you're using a version of OS 10 that's older than Lion, you have to know that your system is vulnerable, not just to this, but to other things too. You might be vulnerable to Heartbleed also. So yeah, so in conclusion, Shellshock is it's very serious. I think everyone should take it seriously. That is, if you're on Windows, and you don't have to worry about it. Probably not. But it's very serious, and I'm really disappointed with Apple. I'm not sure exactly why I did not get this Bash update. You know, I have to research into that more. If you have, if you understand why, and again, I'm not an OS 10 expert. If you know why, please leave in the comments, and I would love to hear that. Because really, all I've been doing to keep my system up to date has been going up here and going software update, and just whatever, whatever the App Store tells me I need to update, I've been updating. But yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, do I have to be manually updating this? And I know that probably 99% of Mac users are not doing this. They're just going, if they're even updating at all, they're just doing what I did. And and I discovered this because I was at my friend's house, and we just said like, oh, why don't we check this script? And I was surprised to say, wow, okay, he's vulnerable. And then I was like, I better go home and check if I'm vulnerable, and I found that I was. And yeah, so if you're using OS 10, then you should definitely run this script and see if you're vulnerable. Also note that just because it says, like for me right now, it did 7 checks. If you see in the screenshot, back then it only did 4 checks, so they're adding more checks to it. Just because it says I'm not vulnerable to all 7 of these checks does not mean I'm not vulnerable, because they keep discovering new kind of variations on how to exploit Bash. So you really got to keep on top of this. And yeah, but so what do you do if you're not if you're on an OS 10 that's older than Lion and you can't use one of these links? Well, you could compile Bash yourself, but realistically, probably most people on OS 10 are not going to do that. What you could do is, if your hardware supports it, you could update to a newer version of OS 10 and then run this script again to check. Or if not, just stop using OS 10, really. I mean, a lot of people think that OS 10 is so safe, so secure, but the truth is, it is like Apple said, it is based on Unix, so that should make it a pretty secure platform. But my concern with OS 10 is the way that Apple does not take security very seriously. They're not looking out for the best interests of their users, and they're really not very good. Like I'm so confused. Even you look at this Bash update, and it says OS 10 Bash Update 1.0. Well, what does that mean? That's the update version? I mean, because I'm not running Bash version 1.0. If you look, check version of Bash, I'm running 3.2.53. and copyright 2007. So I don't, and I was hoping that there would be a way like checking my version to see which versions are vulnerable, but I couldn't really find that. So, yeah, so just the way that Apple handles their security and support, it's really ambiguous. And again, this is their security updates, and I saw this, but I figured, like, oh, surely I must have gotten this security update, but I had to manually install it. So yeah, so again, I'm not an OS 10 expert, far from it, but I did. Yeah, I just did a little research, and I was just shocked to find that my system was still vulnerable. Hopefully this video was helpful to other people. And and if you're out shopping for a new computer, I think this is something to consider. And really, my main system is Linux, and it was really as simple as one command, just update, and I got new bash updates. And I've been getting new bash updates, and I haven't had to worry about it really. I did on my Linux computer run this script, and the very first time, it showed that I wasn't vulnerable to anything. So so again, Linux is just far and away. Yeah, Linux is just great. I love Linux, so I just gotta give a shout out. Linux, it makes it really easy to stay secure, stay up to date, and it's just a really solid platform. And yeah, but so hopefully this video was helpful to you. If you have further information or inaccuracies, please leave a comment. And if you have any questions, you can leave a comment too, and I will try to help you as best I can if I am able to. All right, thanks for watching, everybody.